What is up, everyone? Barricade here, and I'm bringing you guys a little discussion that I wanted to talk to you guys real quick. Just something that I'm going to give a huge opinion on. Obviously, you already know what it is with the, name of the video here. But I've heard so many people, many, many fans want this and talk about this and say the new Gears of War game should be in the Pendulum Wars. And I don't know. Whenever I hear people say that, I just can't help but think, no, 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 no. Just this would not be a good idea. And here's why. I'm not here to bash, I'm not here to talk shit, I'm not here to make anyone feel dumb if they thought this was a good idea. All I'm here to say is why I think a Gears of War game set in the Pendulum War era would be a bad idea. Because in my honest opinion, it wouldn't make for a good game, it wouldn't make a good story, and it just overall would be a pointless game, in my opinion. But let me at least explain why. Okay, first of all, this is like one of the main reasons why I believe a Gears of War Pendulum War game, whether if it's called Gears of War 4 Pendulum Wars, Gears of War Pendulum War, whatever. The reason why I wouldn't want it to be in it, one of the main reasons is because the whole entire series, from Gears 1 to Gears 3 and Judgment, I don't really count Judgment, but even Judgment did this, is the storyline in every story Gears of War game, the campaigns, it always had to do with the humans fighting the Locust, the people fighting the monsters. That is an entire point of the series. That's the main focal point of the series, is humans fighting these creatures, these horrible creatures that just came out of the earth out of nowhere and just started attacking and murdering people without reason. And with this type of series, with this type of setting for, Gears of War, it always called this type of eeriness. It always caused this type of eeriness and darkness and this type of desperation for the characters and the players themselves. It always made them feel like, what's going on? Why is this happening? If you read into the novels, it stated that it was only like several weeks after the Pendulum Wars ended, and boom, the Locusts just come out of nowhere and start murdering people. After they finally ended the Pendulum Wars, after 79 years of war, these creatures come out of nowhere and start destroying everything. And that was the main focal point for this series, is that, trying to understand why these creatures are doing this, and then on top of it, having this type of darkness towards it. The thing that always made Gears of War so awesome to me is fighting these creatures. Fighting, when the first time you saw a boomer, you just sit there and think about it. Back to Gears 1, the boomer comes out. You've never seen a boomer before. You see that scene where the little rat is walking in the ground and then this big old foot comes out of nowhere and stomps on it. And you're like, what the heck, what is that? And then you see that there's this big ass locust that is far bigger than, what you've seen so far, than, a drone or a sniper or whatever. And it's carrying this big old weapon. And it's just like scenes like that made Gears of War what it was. And had this horrible darkness to it. I keep saying darkness, I know, I'm sorry. But it's true, the overall story and how it's like been displayed is this horrible dark eeriness that just feels completely desperate. The locusts push the humans to this state of desperation that they had to literally hammer of dawn themselves and fry most of the planet and kill a huge portion of the human population just to try to end the war, and even that didn't work. And just certain things like that make the locust a great enemy. And with the Pendulum Wars, you would, instead of taking a step forward, you would be taking a giant step backwards, and you would take away all that eeriness, all that darkness, all that scariness, and all that like sense of fear. And all you'd be, instead of fighting these crazy monsters like a boomer, a cantus, a drone, a berserker, a ticker, the krill, all and corpser, all, instead of fighting those crazy things that made you feel this way, all you'd be fighting is people, people with guns. A person with the rifle lancer, a person with a handgun, a person with the shotgun. That's all you would be fighting the whole time. is these people. And then if it follows the lore of the series, Judgment kind of took a shit on that when they had the Lancer in it, because if you read the novels, it was stated that the Lancer wasn't made until 1 year after E-Day, but they decided to make it 30 days after E-Day, and they had the chainsaw bayonet already. I guess the creators didn't read the book, but they already took a shit on that with that, but at least it made sense. They made the chainsaw bayonet to combat the Locust, and that was always pretty much established. In the novels, especially in the novels, it was established that they made the chainsaw bayonet with an idea that Ty basically thought of on the spot, and it caused them to make this awesome weapon. And it was because the retro bayonet, the blade, wouldn't do nothing. You try to stab him, and there's a part where Marcus tries to stab a drone, and the blade snaps in half, and then that's what made them think of something more better, more stronger, a chainsaw. And for them, like, this is one of the main reasons, another reason why I wouldn't want to see a Pendulum War Gears of War game, because if they followed the lore and decided to keep that true, that they made the chainsaw bayonet for the Locust, then you would only have a retro lancer. Imagine playing a Gears of War game where you're fighting humans and all you're using is a retro lancer. You wouldn't even have the hammer burst. You wouldn't even have any of the amazing weapons that the Locust brought into the series. Many people forget that the like more than half of the weapons, or at least half of the weapons, are from the Locust. You have the boom shot, the torque bow, and I think even the Boltok is actually a Locust weapon. If you look at the Boltok, it has like the Locust emblem on it. It maybe could have been a human weapon, but they just put a Locust emblem on it. I don't know, but you got the boom shot, torque bow. You got all these other weapons that the Locust brought into the series. And if you were to make it in the Pendulum Wars, you wouldn't have those weapons. You wouldn't have those crazy things like the digger or certain other things like that, or or the ink grenades or stuff like that. Weapons that were made, the Locust made. And it would make no sense for them to have such weapons in the Pendulum Wars, because the Locust made these weapons and they haven't even seen the Locust yet, first of all. And then on top of it, if they start making like these little copy weapons where they look just like the guns, but they're human versions, that would just be silly. I wouldn't like that. That would just be like, what? And just many things that made the series what it was is because they were fighting the Locust. And they take that away by, making it into human versus human again. Not to mention the multiplayer would also be human versus human. It just wouldn't be good. It just wouldn't go well. It just wouldn't. It sounds good on paper, but it wouldn't be executed properly, and it probably would just make for another bad game. And actually, for the multiplayer, it would be a little better than Judgments, I guess, because in Judgments it's just COG versus COG, which was stupid. But at least they would have COG versus UIR, so you'd probably have like Marcus chainsawing a dude that was from the UIR, in the campaign that he met or something. And that would be better than Judgments, but that still wouldn't be as good as fighting the Locust in the multiplayer. I prefer fighting, what it's always been from Gears 1 to 3, always fighting people. And then not to mention, it makes it easier to tell who, what team you're on. I've heard people play Judgment and they get confused at times because, yeah, it's red and blue, but a lot of times, if you played from Gears 1 to Gears 3, it's kind of hard to differentiate the opponents at times. Hell, even I've done that. I play Judgment sometimes, every once in a long time, and I'll be walking, and then my teammate will walk up right in front of me, and I'll get scared and try to shoot him, and then I'm like, oh wait, you're my teammate because you're blue or because you're red or whatever, and it just doesn't have that type of awesomeness that it would have, if you're fighting the Locust. And the way, in my opinion, I think the way the next Gears of War game should be is it should be in, obviously after E-Day, post E-Day with the Locust. And it should be like another prequel game, maybe like after Judgment or something, if they still want to count Judgment as canon. In my opinion, I'd be okay if they completely disregarded Judgment as a canon game. Canon means just like an actual official part of the story, if you don't know what that means. And if they just pretended like Judgment didn't happen, even in the story, I would be okay with that, because as much, if you guys seen my videos before, you know how much I hate that game. But yeah, in my honest opinion, it should be after E-Day with the Locust again, and yeah. And, back to what I was saying before, though, another reason why I just don't like the idea of Pendulum Wars is because another great fact of, fighting the Locust, the other Gears of War games provided, besides fighting, these crazy monsters, is also like boss fights and stuff. In Gears of War 1, the first boss you fight is a Berserker, and then later on, at the end of the game, you fight Rom, and in Gears 2, you fight Scourge, and etc., etc. You fight these crazy monsters, and like in Gears 2 with the Leviathan and stuff like that. You wouldn't get stuff like that with the Pendulum Wars. All it is people versus people. And can you really sit there and honestly say that they would have an awesome boss fight fighting a person? Like, no, that wouldn't work unless they decided to pull like something like from Metal Gear Solid out of nowhere, and there's like these super soldiers that are like crazy, strong and overpowered. But that wouldn't make sense either, because if these soldiers existed, why wouldn't they be fighting the Locust? Gears of War has always been about normal humans, not overpowered humans. Yeah, they're buff and they have huge ass feet that they can curb stomp people with, and they can chainsaw and all that crazy stuff. But in the end, they're still normal people. They're not. It's not like Halo where they're like genetically enhanced humans. And they can't add something like that to the series because that wouldn't make any sense, first of all. And then it just wouldn't add a great sense of like a boss battle. It just wouldn't. Like, every single aspect of Gears of War is because of the Locust. That's just all I'm trying to say here. Every single thing about the campaign, the multiplayer, thing that makes Gears of War so cool is because you're fighting these crazy, unbelievable monsters that are actually kind of different, even for the whole, human versus monsters thing when you really think about it. Because in other games, yeah, there are aliens and stuff like Halo, there's aliens, but the thing that made me think Gears of War was so awesome when it came to the Locust was because it was, yeah, you're fighting these creatures, but yet they even control other creatures. You have, you know, Corpsers, you have the Brumax, you have these crazy monsters that are just like way, way out of nowhere, like out of nothing, like just out of nowhere, just these crazy creatures. And that's what made Gears of War awesome, and you wouldn't get anything like that. You wouldn't get the eeriness, you wouldn't get the darkness, you wouldn't get the random scariness, you wouldn't get the random nothing like that. You wouldn't get anything that Gears of War has provided and made awesome in a Gears of War Pendulum Wars game. It would just be humans versus humans. It would lack all the Locust weapons. It wouldn't have crazy boss battles against giant monsters. And it would just be kind of boring. And then another thing that the main reason too, reason why I wouldn't want it to be Pendulum Wars, is because it was basically established in the novels that it was humans versus humans, obviously, and that's all it was. It was just them fighting over emulsion, etc. And if they made a Gears of War campaign that had to do with fighting, the UIR and the Pendulum Wars, it would have nothing to do with the other games. It wouldn't answer any questions. It wouldn't necessarily answer anything that we would want to know from the other Gears of War game. The only thing I can think of is maybe it would answer like why the Queen looks human. That's like the only thing I can think of. And but besides, like, the Locust and Lamb and all that stuff, it would have nothing to do with that. And for them to just build up this lore with these crazy creatures and these crazy unanswered questions, and then take a step back and fighting people, it just wouldn't work. It just wouldn't. And like, I'm not trying to bash. I'm not saying it's like a stupid idea or nothing, but in the end, it just wouldn't work. It sounds good on paper. Many people want it, but no, it just would not work, in my opinion. And yeah, that's all I just wanted to say in this video. I actually did this in one take. Wow. But anyways, guys, if you guys like this video, please definitely hit that like button and subscribe and tell me what you guys think. Would you guys want Gears of War 4 to be in the Pendulum Wars? Do you agree with me or disagree with me? Tell me why in the comments below. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching and take it easy.